Hi students, just wanted to take a very short moment of your time with a very short video showing you what we are expecting when we ask for study notes. Now, if you go out to the Learning Hub, you'll see a new assignment has been created, a new e-lesson for creating study notes, and you'll see a few different PDF documents. This first one is the instruction sheet for this assignment, for what you need to do to create study notes and what we expect from you, that sort of thing, how we grade them. That can be found here. Then I've got the actual study topics, that is those are the things that are going to be on the exam. Please notice I have two separate files because there is one topic of difference between what students are going to see on my test in my classroom versus Ms. Krug's test. The difference is very minimal, but there is one topic of difference that Ms. Krug studied that I didn't, and that we studied that she didn't. So there's one quick thing that you need to, or please just select which instructor you have and don't study the wrong topics. Finally, on here you'll see that I've created an assignment for your study notes, but you do not have to submit them on the Learning Hub. I know a lot of you will probably handwrite your study notes. That's fine. If you want to handwrite your study notes, just turn them in class. No need to submit them here. But if you like using Learning Hub and you plan to do your study notes in like a Word document, something like that, then feel free to submit them here and they'll be safe and sound. So let's just take a look at what study notes are. I'm going to open up my own instruction sheet. And as it was probably explained to you in class, study notes are basically just a self-created review or self-created study guide. We will never give you a review before any exam in this class because that's essentially the student's responsibility. I'm not sure where along the line that became the teacher's responsibility, but after high school, you're never going to see a professor give you a document that you need to study. You're just expected to kind of create your own exercises and examples. So here's the instruction sheet. It just kind of goes through the process of what note-taking is, what it is not, but here's the actual assignment. Prior to each exam in AP Lang, you'll be required to create a set of study notes as you study. These study notes should resemble a sort of self-made review or study guide and should cover all materials the test will cover. Your study notes may be either typed or handwritten. If typed, you may submit them to the course website or print them out and bring them to class to turn in. Your study notes must be turned in at the time of your exam and will be scored as a daily grade. Just like your vocab flashcards, if you do not have them at the time of the exam when they are called for, it is considered late, and if it's late on a daily grade, it's a 0. So there's just no questions asked about that. Must be turned in at the time of the exam. That goes for handwritten notes submitted in person as well as submitted notes submitted on the Learning Hub. Instructions. So here's how you create study notes. It's really, there's no set process, just like there's no set process for taking raw notes. So always begin by reviewing your notes, just as you always have, but make sure that you have paper and pen or pencil in front of you. Then just go ahead and create the following. And you can do this in any order. You don't have to go in the order that I give you here. But I like to go ahead and start by summarizing and responding to all of the texts that I studied. I'll go back and look at the 5 or 6 texts that we've studied so far this year, and then just review each text aloud. Look at through your notes. What did you note about Plato's Myth of the Cave? And then for each text, write a short summary of each, just to kind of reinforce what each one is about. Because even though you've already kind of summed up what Plato's Myth of the Cave was about, it's been a few weeks since then. Your perceptions of it may have changed, and so write another just paragraph summary of it. And after each summary, as always, you want to interact with your notes, with your study. So write a short personal response in which you join in the author's discussion. The more you write on these summaries and responses, the more precise your study of the text will be. So just use that as a guide. Next, go ahead and write summaries and responses of all the other contextual materials that we've studied, things that we asked you to study but weren't really assigned readings. Things like the notes over Walden and Transcendentalism. We'll typically give you notes like that anytime we shift gears into another time period or literary movement. So always write summaries and responses to that. Your summaries for these, since you're not really summarizing a text, just summarize what the time period was about, summarize what the literary movement was about, and then in your response try to make connections across the text that we've read, how one is like the other because it deals with such and such theme or idea, that sort of thing. Again, all you're doing is just kind of reinforcing these ideas, solidifying them in your mind so that you're prepared to answer questions about them on the exam. Next, what I like to do is go ahead and ask a series of sample questions that your instructor might ask about the exam. I did this all throughout college, and this is a great study tool. Try to predict, based on what your instructor talks about in class and what was in the assigned readings, try to predict what kinds of questions your instructor might ask about the material, and answer these questions just in your own words. There's only so many things I could possibly ask you about Emerson's American Scholar. And when you consider what I assigned you later, pieces like I Live in a Van Down by Duke University, and how that relates back to American Scholar, it narrows it down even more to what I'm probably going to ask about. So try to get inside your instructor's brains just a little bit. And this is, again, a key skill that will help you all throughout college as well. Finally, this one's pretty simple. Create some sample exercises and examples of any of the skills that you've studied for this test. So, I mean, we've studied a lot of, not a lot, but some grammar concepts, things like subject-verb pairs and verb types and clause types. Create some of those create some exercises to work through yourself. Look back at the Nora Bacon exercises that we assigned you in that lesson 1, and just create some more of those. Really easy places to find those: websites like New York Times, websites like Washington Post, Wall Street Journal, Miami Herald, or just go to a newspaper's website and start copying and pasting articles into documents or handwriting them out, and just include those sentences into some sort of example. Here are the scoring guidelines. I won't read those to you. They're just here for you guys to read to see how I will score those. I'm going to score them on the same effective, adequate, inadequate, and little success scale. All right. So, as I said before, here are the topics of study. Okay, just look at those. I showed these to all of my students in class. Ms. Krug may have done the same, but I just told you I was going to throw them out here anyway. So make sure you're always familiar. Let this sort of guide how you're creating your study notes. Okay. So let's look at how I might create some study notes. I'm going to start with Myth of the Cave, just because that's the document I have open with my notes in it. Let's create some study notes over Myth of the Cave. And essentially, I'm just going to review my notes, just like you normally would, the night before an exam. And I'll look through my notes. Blah, 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 blah. I'm just going to kind of, think through them, maybe talk out loud. Now I'm going to write just kind of a response to that. And here you can see I've already set up just a page of study notes. I don't need MLA formatting or anything like that. You need your name on them, but you don't need to make them fancy. These are my study notes for the Rudiments of Composition Exam number 1. I'm going to start with Plato's Myth of the Cave, and I'm just going to start by writing a summary. Plato's, myth ultimately concepts of enlightenment and social responsibility, etc., etc. Okay? Oops. So I'm just going to write a paragraph, just kind of what I remember or what I've learned from Plato's myth. And now for, I can title that my summary. You can title these if you want. Yeah, there you go. Again, it's like note-taking. You don't have to do it exactly this way, but you need to have this sort of stuff in there. In my response, Plato's myth, though written 2,500 years, 2,400 years ago. Though written 2,400 years ago, has application in a number of texts we've read. For example, Emerson discusses in his American Scholar, and you can kind of see where I'm going with this. I'm just kind of my own personal response. And so I'm trying to make connections to other texts. Eventually I will get around to, for me, Plato's, my own personal take. Myth is a call to action, reminding. It's very cold in my classroom right now, which is why I can't seem to type. Reminding me of my responsibilities as an educator. Yeah, it'd be a lot of fun to shut myself up in a room and read books, but that's not my responsibility. My responsibility is to you people. So, that sort of thing. Okay. Of course, your summary, you need to spend a few more minutes and actually finish your summary and finish your response and that sort of thing. Try not to spend more than, 10, 15 minutes per text, because then otherwise it starts really, really racking up. Just really quickly jot down some ideas. We're solidifying this in our mind. Okay, so that's really essentially it for creating exercises and examples. That's not very hard at all. Look, I'm just going to go out to New York Times. And I prefer on New York Times, if you just click on any article, a lot of times articles, as with modern journalism, are written very simply, very plainly. If you want something that's written with a little more style, which is what you really need to be looking at when you're trying to find clause types and stuff like that, go to their opinion section and just take a look at some of their columnists. Let's see, columnists. I mean, any of these will do fine. Is there anyone that I particularly... Paul Krugman. I like Paul Krugman. He's an economist. Yeah, here we go. So I'm just going to copy and paste this into like a Word document, or into my Word document that I've started up. And I'm going to start, I don't know, making some exercises out of it. I could just start by, looking at subject-verb pair. Oops. Here's the subject. Wow, that's a long subject. Sheriff committee will be holding, boom. Okay. Oh, did you know how I did that, by the way? Double underline, Control Shift D. D is in double underline. That's just a little tip for you. So that's the sort of thing. And eventually I'll look at verb types and clause types. I'll start splitting this up into sentences just to make it easier to look at. I know we'll be holding meeting. That's transitive, independent clause, those sorts of things. I'm just creating exercises like I saw with my my Bacon lesson. All right, so that's it for creating study notes. Make sure that you keep in mind where the instruction sheet is for this in case you need to refer back to it. You will need to read those scoring guidelines just to make sure that you understand how we're going to score those. Once again, your study notes are due at the time of the exam, either in person, handwritten or typed, or if you type them and would prefer to submit a digital file, that's fine too. You can submit them on the assignment that I showed you on the Course Hub page right here. All right, I hope that was helpful. Doing study notes like this is just a surefire way to do better on every single exam, and it's required in our class. It's required as a daily grade. Thanks for watching.